Story 1. Knocking. Bella awoke from a horrible dream, or at least she thought she did. Somehow she knew she was still dreaming, but she now looked down upon herself as if watching a movie, something like someone having had recorded her and playing it back for her. But the edges around the picture looked hazy. There Washington, as a certain numbness that just told her she was still dreaming but unable to actually interact and intervene. She watched herself rise, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She was in a cozy little bedroom that seemed so very familiar. She was sure she'd seen it, even having been inside it before, yet it still felt wrong. A small, clean single bed sat in the corner, one she'd risen from. The air was bathed in artificial heat. It felt refreshing. The lighting was dim and flickering slightly, as if ablaze by candle, but nothing visible seemed to be producing it, and there wasn't a single window to allow natural light inside. A sharp rapping of wood startled her and broke the trance. The dream version of Bella stood still for a second, seemingly frozen in time. She watched intently, as if looking in through a haze-filled pane of glass, at herself. The rapping continued. Someone was knocking on a wooden door somewhere, and they continued to do so until she finally decided to move far. The cozy bedroom. The hallway outside the room was long, extremely dark, and cold, bone-chillingly cold compared to the comforting warmth of that bedroom. The knocking got louder and sharper. A chill ran up Bella's spine as she stepped out into the hallway, the air out here spreading goosebumps over her body. She could feel the chill inside and outside of the dream. It seemed a faint light crept out from the darkness down the long, unrealistically long hallway. Each step she took thundered around her in a deafening echo, the atmosphere thick and intensely quiet, all except for the constant pounding of the door somewhere down the hall. Every few seconds, after what seemed like an eternity, she emerged from the hole into the light. The place seemed like some sort of extremely rustic for a heavy oak-looking door without a single pane of glass stood before her, seemingly the door that was being knocked on. Bella slowly reached for the heavy-looking iron handlebar clasped around the ice-cold metal, but hesitant to pull it open. Everything told her not to open this door, to just ignore the constant knocking and walk back down that strangely long hallway and lock herself away in that cozy little warm bedroom. Whatever was knocking obviously hadn't tried to open the door itself yet. She was doubtful that it would. She felt this as certain. It had been knocking now for at least 10 minutes. The trek down the hall had to have taken nearly 8 alone. At least it had seemed so. Just turn around, block out the knocking, go back into the cozy little candlelit bedroom, lock the door and curl up on the bed therein. That simple, just drift off to sleep and forget about this. The real Bella intervened here. Somehow just fall asleep and wake back up, but for real this time. Put this behind you. But the knocking continued to grow louder and more frequent. It seemed insanely loud now, each knock in quick succession, echoing like a thunder blast of an intense storm. Bella's grip tightened on the door handle and slowly began to pull. A creak was heard as a small gust of wintry wind swept inside. The knocking ceased, and for a moment she stood frozen. Again she rolled the thought of just turning away through her mind. Just shut the door again and turn around. Instead, she quickly as she could anyway, as the heavy oaken door weighed even more than it looked, flung the thing ajar. The first thing her eyes focused on was the whiteness of the large yard beyond the threshold. And her eyes focused. Before her stood the near, skeletal face of a woman. Its fleshless face seemed to form a permanent grin, eyes hanging from it, and from its straggly gray hair there were no eyes in its hollowed-out sockets, and no sign of anything seeing from them. Nonetheless, it stared intently for a few seconds. Bella could feel its gaze, feel it in her bones, looking through her. Ragged, white flesh hung loosely from the knuckles of its right hand, still raised as it had been knocking. Bella was frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe even. Finally, the corpse's jaw seemed to unhinge, lowering as a shrill, bone-chilling wail escaped from within its frozen, decaying body. A thin yellow mist poured from the mouth, and finally Belle found her breath as a thin yelp escaped from her own throat, and her feet finally seemed free to move, and move she did. Running? No. Sprinting back down the too long hallway, the banshee-like scream continued behind her as she heard the all too quick clattering footsteps chasing behind. Forcing herself not to look back, she just continued to run as fast as her short legs could carry her. The wailing and the footfalls seemed to be catching up to her. Bella's lungs were burning, her energy quickly draining. She chanced to look back over the shoulder and caught sight of the thing again. It ran like an Olympian, the trail of yellowed gas having filled the hallway behind them and streaming from the gaping jaws of the corpse. The bedroom was getting closer. Bella could see the light under the crack of the door, even feel the change in temperature slightly. She knew somehow that if she could get back in there, she could shut the thing out and everything would just somehow be fine. But her legs were faltering, her lungs burning as if doused in napalm. She felt nauseated, sweating and gasping desperately for precious oxygen. But it wasn't just the sheer exertion of the near 10-minute-long sprint down this freakishly long hall. The air was steadily growing more and more sour and acidic. It stung her eyes now and burned in her nostrils and in the back of her throat. The hall was filling with the yellow gas that seemed to just gush forth from the thing behind her with each blood-curdling scream it unleashed. The door to the bedroom was now in sight. She could feel its radiating warmth, feel the anxiousness in her every pore to dash inside and slam the door shut behind her. But her vision was growing fishy. She felt a warm liquid run down her nose trail into her chin, knowing without looking it was blood. Her throat felt ragged, raw, and mangled with each wheezing breath that tried to escape. She could not only feel, but even slightly taste the rustins as of blood running down into her esophagus. Her legs felt like jello, her feet numb, eyelids seeming to swell. She stumbled, catching herself, her hand pressed against the worn door of the bedroom to prop herself up. Within arm's reach was freedom, narrowed down for the taking. Only wouldn't a lock to put this horrible nightmare behind her. Bella choked on blood, coughing, her eyes blinded now. She slumped forward against the door, head pressed against it. So close, so very close. She felt the thin, skeletal grip grasp her neck, fingers so cold they burned. Literally and instinctively, Bella jerked back, freeing herself from the searing grasp. A new smell mixing into the noxious, burning chemical odor wafting to her nose for a moment, seared flesh. As she jerked by, CK the door swung open, spilling its oh-so cozy candle like light into the dark, gas-filled hallway, the warmth splashing out like a tidal wave. Bella hit the floor gasping for breath, eyes, nose, ears and mouth oozing dark and blood now her swelled, watery eyes glimpsing freedom. It mocked her, laughing at her pitiful attempt to find sanctuary. No, not it. The skeletal thing was, laughing as that searingly cold, clutching grip again latched around her neck. With a start, Bella awoke from a terrible dream it had seemed so realistic. She sat on the edge of her bed, trying to sort out the details and feeling a tinge of déjà vu, probably a sick fevered dream, as she felt like she was coming down with something. Her throat and sinuses felt kind of ragged and sore, her eyes burned. The hint of an unpleasant acrid aftertaste lingered at the back of her tongue. She shivered, wrapping a blanket over her shoulders. Something felt off. This was the bedroom she'd spent a majority of her childhood in, the bedroom in her parents' house, not the bedroom of the upstairs apartment she rented now as a working college student. She shook her head. Her mind felt hazy, and it made her a bit dizzy. She just needed rest. She decided it'd be better if she just went back to sleep, rest being the best medicine. A sharp knocking came from somewhere seemingly far away. It was persistent. Exhaustion tugged at Bella's mind as she rose, letting the warmth and comfort of the blanket slide to the floorboards. She trembled as she slowly opened the door, not really understanding why. The hallway beyond was frigidly cold and dark, so very dark. The knocking continued, louder each time, determined to be responded to. Story 2. Calhuzzacon. It was probably Nathi. NG, he thought, suppressing a shiver of fear. Just next door's cat jumping down from the bureau, or the broom falling over in the kitchen. After all, everybody knows that in the dead of night, even the smallest sound pierces the veil of silence, and encroaching dreams like the report of a gunshot. Even better, it had just been the house settling. That was something his mother often said. Indeed, for a few seconds it went some way to quelling his current trepidation. If she'd told him that, then surely it must be true. His mother wouldn't. Story 3. The Brains Genocide. It's been nearly 6 years since my internship at Warner Brothers. How time flies, right? Well, most of my memories are positive. I had a great time, learned a lot, made some awesome friends, and gained invaluable experience that still helps me today. There were a couple of unpleasant incidents, however, but I figure every job's like that, right? Like here's one. I figure I won. TB burning any bridges because I'm not naming names or getting too specific, and I doubt anyone would come forward to claim culpability anyway. So I think I am safe, and hopefully none of you will go behind my back to rat me out to any sabotaging industry. Higher-ups, believe me, they've got bigger fish to fry. Plausible deniability. It's all fictional also, this story is. Not for the young uns, and I don't just mean because it may jade you out of working for the dream factory that is Tinseltown. Anyway, sometimes I would get sent to the Warner's archive on the other side of the studio lot, usually to pick up some documents or a script too sensitive to facts. Once in a while they'd send me to retrieve a tape, DVD an executive wanted to watch for entertainment or research purposes. On one such trip, I'm not saying what property they were, thinking about remaking, not violating my NDA. I got to see the old cartoon archives, which was neat. I took perhaps more time than I load have going through the files, and confessional time is the statute of limitations up. I took one DVD that interested me, took it back to the office, and burnt myself a copy before returning it at the end of the day. So not really stealing, right? The DVD was labeled in purple Sharpie. These weren't in glossy professional boxes. These were random and unreleased. Animaniacs Extra S. So you can imagine how that appealed to me. I loved Animaniacs. And I got a real kick of the time the senior intern gave me a studio tour, and when we came to the water tower, he said, "That's where the Animaniacs live." I took the copy home and opened it on my computer. There were several files on the disk. Most were, as I expected, simply deleted scenes, very short clips deleted. I assumed for either content, think fingerprints, or just for time, but the brain's genocide .avi caught my eye. I knew they flew some stuff under the radar and could get subversive again. Fingerprints, but jokes about mass murder. I took a watch. This wasn't a 30-second clip, but an entire, I guess you'd call it, lost episode of Pinky and the Brain. I was jazzed and puzzled. Why would they throw away an entire episode? Then I saw. The Brain's genocide starts off like any typical episode of Pinky and the Brain, except the sound quality in the opening song Washington. As bit off, one is a genius, the other is insane, was weirdly scratchy and uncharacteristic. Like they got freaking Danzig to sing the last word. The plot begins as standard fare, the Brain's scheme. This time is to brainwash the world by getting on to the radio waves and sending out hypnotic messages. Maybe they cut it for being too derivative of other episodes. Though I did like the obvious references to W.A.R. of the Worlds, Morris, Lamarck's, Orson Welles is always classic. I soon began to notice unsettling irregularities, like when Pinky and the Brain break into the radio station. They're temporarily held up by a security guard named Phil. On his name tag, the Brain takes out his brainwashing microphone. I don't know. It was the device he was using for his grand and tells Phil to stand down. We see the sound waves come out of the mic and stop Phil in his tracks. There's an extended, still close-up on Phil's face, and it is unnervingly realistic. Way too much detail of his crusty, wide-open eyes, crow's feet, his pasty skin. It would be a bit much for Ren and Stimpy, let alone Pinky and the Brain, and for a split second it looked like the rotoscoped image of a real man's face, and this goes on for 10 silent, still seconds, uncanny. So typical of the formula, Brain's plan starts to work before Pinky screws it up. We see the transmission G.O. around the world, and everyone start to submit to the Brain as their unquestioned leader before Pinky stumbles into the mic and starts going narf, narf, narf. Then that's the message. Everyone is brainwashed with. Every human on Earth starts jumping up and down and narfing. It's not as funny as you might think, because they make it too realistic, like showing what would happen if everyone stopped what they were doing and immediately acted like car crash with twisted limbs in a kid's cartoon. A surprisingly well-drawn caricature of President Clinton bangs his head on TH. Irresolute desk until blood comes out. The brain is furious. Naturally, his face takes on a very aggressive, ugly, angry quality, like he's madder and more vicious than his usual annoyance at his partner. We then cut to the brain's lab, where Pinky is cuffed down to a table with a grotesque array of metal instruments hanging over him. The brain is standing next to him with his hand on the lever. It's not goofy at all, because Pinky is legitimately frightened. It's so out of character for him. I mean, his voice is literally shaking when he says, "What are you going to do to me tonight, brain? What I should have done to you every night." The brain said this with real venom, and Pinky starts to sob. "Please don't, I promise I'll be a good boy," but the brain ignores his pleas, and we only focus on the brain's face, a twisted, hateful visage, as he pulls the lever and watches his friend get tortured to death. And here, where the video went from simply a dark cartoon to legitimately real life. Disturbing, because Pinky's screams now sound like a real mouse being tortured. Not Rob Paulson's cartoon yiping, but an actual animal, sure, aching for its life, really bad. Then we see the brain rise to power, now that he's unencumbered by his buffoonish assistant. Back to the radio station and his brainwashing signal going all over the world. We see statues raised in the brain's honor, men in jackboots and mice masks marching through the streets and oppressing dissidents. I guess their masks were supposed to look like the brain, but I couldn't help but think of Art Spiegelman's Moz. Here's something else messed up. The cartoon of this megalomaniac cartoon mouse's world domination is intercut with brief footage, poor quality like a cheap camcorder, panning across a field, showing a mass grave of children, live action. Silent, no living character on screen. Just a pile of dead little bodies I couldn't recognize the setting or even the country. It looked flat and muddy. Or even when it took place, what 20th century atrocity this was portraying. Goosebumps. Not that the brain is triumphing in this power. Back to animation. We see him sitting in his palace. I guess it was supposed to be Buckingham, as the establishing shot with the huge flags, literally just the brain's face on a black background. Outside indicated the brain is sitting in his empty office, alone in some odd state of despair. Pinky. His soft voice pierces the silence, and I jump a little, because it had been so quiet for so long. The brain looks across the room and sees Pinky standing there. Years later, when I saw Phantom Thread, I swore Paul Thomas Anderson must have seen this lost episode, because the scene where Reynolds sees his mother's ghost just standing there silently watching him. Pinky's face is blank and drawn out, and the brain's voice is forlorn and resigned to this bleak state. He said, "You're watching me. That's all right. I deserve it. Are you pondering what I'm pondering?" The brain lowers his head and starts to sob. "What have I done?" And we hear his voice-over narrate the last two scenes. I still get chills writing this years later. The camera, black and white, now shows live-action footage of the Warner Brothers lot. We don't see who's filming, but we see the silhouette of the cameraman, and it looked like he was wearing a giant mouse head, a theme park costume, but no one was having fun. The camera stops on the lingering shot of the water tower, WB displayed prominently. What have I done? Cut to inside the water tower, I'm guessing. It looks like security footage. A large empty basin where Phil, the security guard in real life, looks just like his cartoon counterpart, is trapped and screaming for help. Of course, this is all silent except for the brain's "what have I done" over and over, but you can tell he's in pain, especially when he scratches at the metal as if trying to claw his way out. The final shot is just that, a still photo of Phil, drowned inside the water tower, now lead to the brim, cut to static. I threw away the disc, didn't tell anybody about it at work, and from then on, I avoided walking by the Animaniacs' home, even when it meant taking the en route around the studio. I can see why they axed the episode story for cornfields. It was the middle of the night, and we've been driving all day. We were on a road trip from California to Texas to visit family. My little sister had fallen asleep and was drooling all over her car seat. I laughed at her gaping mouth and reached over to the back seat to close it. My dad was driving and I could tell he was exhausted from dealing with my siblings and Amy. We hadn't passed any towns for about an hour now, and it was dark because there weren't any street lights. I was thinking about what would happen if a zombie attacked us right now. My eyes got droopier and droopier as the hours passed and my stomach started to growl. I complained to Dad and he said we would stop and get something to eat in the next town. I heard my sister start to snore in the background as I drifted off to sleep. I had a weird dream where I was standing in the aisle of a cornfield and there was some Ian or something cloaked in all black sitting in the middle of the field about 30 feet away from me, staring at me. It had blood-red eyes and a twisted smile from what I could see of it. I became very frightened at the sight and started to back away. The thing stood up very slowly and continued to stare at me, as if staring into my soul. I was freaking out now, and I turned to run as fast as I could. I felt as if my life was at stake. As I was running, I decided to quickly glance over my shoulder to see if the thing had followed me. To my horror, the creature was less than a foot away from me. I tripped over some invisible obstacle and hit the floor hard. I was awoken to loud honking and bright lights flashing past my face. I became wide awake instantly. My dad had fallen asleep. I quickly grabbed the steering wheel as I shouted, "Dad, wake up!" But he didn't wake up. I was panicking and I tried to steer as best as I could. Dad's foot was pressing hard on the gas, and luckily any cars that were near had already passed us. My grip on the steering wheel slipped, and we swerved off to the side of the road. As we went down into the ditch, the car sped up Emmons, Ely, and we were thrown into the field, completely destroying the barbed wire fence, shattering the windows of the car and shaking us around like rag dolls. I finally was able to grab the emergency brake and put us to an immediate stop. I hit my head hard on the dashboard and heard an unnerving crack followed by immense pain in my right arm. I screamed and curled up in my seat, cradling my arm. After a few minutes of comforting it, I turned to my dad, still asleep, and started to shake him with my left arm. He would not wake up. It looked like he split his jaw open on the steering wheel. Here was blood all over his neck and shirt. I turned to see my little sister and was completely horrified at the sight of her head being imploded and her arms bent at a grotesque angle. I thought of no possible way how that could have happened to her. I became nauseous at the sight of her and threw up all over my feet. My vision was blurry from the shock, and I couldn't feel anything except my arm. The smell was unnatural. It was like a mixture of feces, vomit, and rotting corpses. My vision returned shortly, and I glanced out the window, wincing from the sharp pain in my neck, and my stomach dropped as I saw a tall, black figure 30 feet away, milliseconds before the headlights on the car turned off. My heart started beating so hard that I could feel it in my feet. I started to hyperventilate, and my mind was completely clear of every thought except, "You are going to die." I looked back from the side window, and the quick pain in my neck brought me back to my senses. I unbuckled my seat belt with my violently shaking hands and crawled into the back seat. Avoiding looking at my disemboweled sister, I sunk down below the back seat and slowly reached my hand out to grab my sister's bloody, shredded blanket to cover myself with. There was a loud bump in the back of the car. I became absolutely silent. I pulled my hand back and held my breath. I could see partially out the shattered backside window. I heard something being dragged on the roof of the car. My gaze fixated on that window. I started saying in my head over and over again, "Please don't see me. Please don't see me. Please don't see me." Over and over again for what seemed like an hour. The dragging had stopped. I dare not move. I was still staring at the window when something tall and black walked past it. I put my hand over my mouth to silence my shriek, but to no avail. The dark creature supposedly heard me and head back around the car and stop in front of the window. I was too tall to see its face, but it soon ducked down, so its eyes stared right into mine. Its eyes were blood red with white veins running through them, and it had a twisted grin too wide to be humanly possible. Its skin was a grotesque brown and black with wounds and cracks all over its face. I saw it had a large gash on its nose, and the blood came out was pitch black, darker than the tattered cloak it was wearing. I stared at it until my eyes burned from not blinking, but I dared not to my unspeakable horror, or it started to slowly crawl through the window into the car, its gaze and my gaze not breaking whatsoever. It reached his long gnarled arm directly for my head. I was paralyzed. It slowly grabbed my hair, and I could do nothing but sit there as it touched my scalp. It started to pull. I felt a sharp pain in my neck and snap out of my trance. This may be the only time in my life I would be thankful for an injury, and kick the creature as hard as I possibly could directly in the face. It screamed the most horrifying wail I could ever imagine, and recoiled out of the car. I took this miraculous opportunity to scramble out from underneath the car seat and open the door. I ran as fast as my legs could possibly go out into the dark night, remembering my dream ID. Had not looked back. I ran until I felt my legs were going to give out, and I kept running. I reached a cornfield and sprinted into the unnerving maze. I stopped and lied down on the cold earth. I started coughing violently, and I turned over and threw up a mixture of blood and mucus. After I regained control of my coughing, I silenced myself in fear the thing would come back. I closed my eyes, and before I knew it, I was asleep. No dreams at time. But I woke up with a start. I looked around cautiously. I started to walk or limp as best I could to a nearby street light near an LP lamp. When I reached it, I sat down on the ground and simply wept. I couldn't understand why this had happened and why me. I sat there for what seemed like hours and mumbled to myself, why and what would I do if I survived the night? I'm only 14. Why did this happen to me? Why did I live instead of my family? Why is this thing after me? None of my questions were going to be answered. My God, boy, what in the hell happened to you? He asked with a heavy Texas drawl. I hesitated before replying, deciding what to say. He looked like he had been out on the road for a long time, and his eyes were very unsettling as he shifted them back and forth, looking up and down the road. It's a long story. I finally managed to say I need a ride. I blurted, suddenly surprising the grizzly man. Oh, do you? He said in a sarcastic voice. He paused and then continued, well then, hop in. I smiled awkwardly and made my way arrow on the front of the car and opened the door with my left hand and wincing, slid into the dirty leather seat. Oh, hold on a sec. I need to check on something, the man said as he got out of the car and walked around to the trunk. I felt a great wave of grief come over me. I had an extremely bad feeling that something was going to happen. I sat there for about 5 minutes and almost got up to go check on the old D-man when I felt a hand on my shoulder and froze. My gaze slowly moved to the rearview mirror. That dark, tall monster was less than an inch from the side of my head, its grin wider than ever. Story 5, 5-day. 5 nights, the first for days. Lachlan had been excited. The 5th day, that Friday that he came back from primary school with dirt on his knees, he was not excited, he was euphoric. I was in my office, writing the final formulaic words of another research proposal. Hey, Dad, oh wow, Sumian. He is happy, enjoy school. School is awesome, that's great. And I have loads of friends. Of course you do. Look. He stretched his small, dirty hand towards me. You cut yourself. No, that looks like a cut. It's a talisman. A what? A tail. S-man, a talisman. Lachlan grinned. A talisman. Oh, you like it. I pulled his hand closer. A perfect circle, clearly cut into his skin, with a small checker in the center. The checker was a solid red, not just a cut, the solid red of his flesh. Did you do that on purpose? No, my friends did it. Your friends did it, yeah. And they did that on purpose, of course. They all have one, too. Lachlan, are those friends older than you? Lachlan nodded. He took a step back, but I still held his hand. And do they go to your school? He nodded. And you know their names? He shook his head. You don't know their names. They don't have names. Oh, I said, but they are in your class. No, but in your school? He nodded. And when did why cut you? In the first break. The first break, Lachlan smiled. They gave it only to me and Nicole. I took my mobile phone from the table. Lachlan, how old were they? I don't know. How tall were they? Smaller than you, smaller, just a bit. N.W. Hat did they look like? I don't know. Really white, really white. My fingers were scrolling through the list of numbers. And where did they do that? On my hand? No, I mean, Where were you when they put it on your hand? Lackland paused. He bent his head to the side. Where were you? Lackland. Downstairs, he said. Downstairs, like in the basement. No, he said, more on stairs. My index finger tapped the name of the class teacher. I asked him whether there was a girl called Nicole in Lackland's class. The teacher said yes. I told him to come to school and to call the parents of that girl. Then I called the police. When we arrived, Miss Bullen was already arguing with the police. That would never happen, she said. Older kids and adults can't just go in here. We stepped towards them. Lackland was scared. I lifted him up, pulled the Band-Aid off, and showed his hand to Miss Bullen and the officers. Lackland said some kids did this. My God, said Miss Bullen. No, said Lackland. Those were my friends. One of the officers bent towards Lackland's hand. Your friends? He asked. Yeah, they showed me the school. And Nicole, too. And they were older than you? Asked the officer. Lackland nodded. And you are sure they were in the school? He nodded again. A mother with a young blonde-haired girl stepped through the door. Lackland waved and tried to get to the ground. Nicole, Nicole, show them too. Nicole stopped walking. She took a few steps back until her mother lifted her up. Show what? Asked the mother. The talisman, said Lack. HLAN ... Nicole shook her head. What talisman? Asked her mother. Lackland grinned. On her hand I have one too. The color of Miss Bullen's face seemed to disappear in the small red wound. On her daughter's left hand, a circle surrounded that square wound, too. The police asked the janitor to save all security tapes. Then they asked Lackland and Nicole to show them where they had met their friends. Downstairs, said Lackland. In the basement, said Nicole. Not the basement, said Lackland. It was more downstairs. Double quotes. It wasn't, said Annie. Show, but it was more black, said Lackland. Nicole nodded. It was really dark, she said, but it didn't hurt. The two pulled us to a flight of stairs at the back of the school. Those stairs are usually locked, said Miss Bullen. The officers called for backup. Then they went downstairs with us, carefully, with Lackland holding my hand and Nicole holding that of her mother. We stepped down into the darkness. Miss Bullen fell on the light switch, and the bare corridor blinked to life with bright white light. Shut doors to each side. One after the other, the officers opened the doors, flipped the light switches on, and searched the rooms. A second pair of officers reached us after half the rooms had been discovered as empty. It's not here, said Lackland. Too much light here, and it's too cold, said Nicole. Yeah, said Lackland. It was really warm. They were really scary. No, said Lackland. They were really nice. They were really wet. Lackland nodded, and Nicole said, they didn't have noses. They had noses, said Lackland, and just flat ones. And they didn't have a mouth, said Nicole. No, said Lackland, that was just their masks. They wore masks, asked the officer. Lackland smiled. Really cool ones. Cool. Scary, said Nicole. Like doctors, said Lackland. But bigger and gray, and you wear 'em. Scared of them? I asked. Lackland shook his head. They are our friends. They started school with us. They've been here the whole time? Asked an officer. Nicole and Lackland both nodded. When all the rooms had been checked, the police interviewed Lackland And Nicole again, there were 3 or 4 of them, white skin, flat noses, large gray masks that looked like microphones, large eyes or sunglasses. They had played with Nicole and Dee Lackland during the week, but not with any other kids. They had asked them to come to the basement, and then, so said Lackland, it was all black and the stairs suddenly ended, and in the darkness he only saw the white of their bodies. Then the men gave them talismans. It was really quick, said Nicole. It didn't hurt. Then the light returned, and they were told to run up the stairs. That night, Lackland fell asleep in my bed with my arms wrapped around him. He wasn't scared. It was for me, not for him. I locked all the windows and doors, checked the attic and every single wardrobe, and still, even with my bedroom door locked, I still could not sleep except with him in my arms. At 2:40 a.m. I woke up, and there was nothing in my arms, and he was not you, near the bed or in the wardrobe, and the bedroom door was still locked from inside. I called the police. Then I called Nicole's mother, and she sounded as panicked as I was. I ran through the whole house and garden, screaming his name. Then I got the call. Nicole's mother. I can't believe it, she said. He's here, nearly 8 miles away, yet he was in a locked bedroom, sleeping in the top bunk next to Nicole. Nicole's sister slept below. The police searched each of our houses, but they didn't find anything suspicious. I took him out of that school and stayed with him in the same room at most times. At night I tied his arm to mine with a silk cloth. Then I wrapped my arms around him. For 2 nights it went fine. The 3rd night I woke up from a girl's screams. Nicole squeezed between Lackland and me. The 4th night I woke up, and he was gone. I called Nicole's mother, and she ran to Nicole's bedroom. I heard her slam the key in the door. She called Nicole's name, but Nicole's voice didn't answer, only her sister. That moment, we both, I think, had a nervous breakdown. I ran through the house again, screaming, and at the other end of the line she and Nicole's older sister seemed to do the same. Then there were screams on the line. Then there was quiet. The police arrived long before me. They found the door locked and rang the bell loud and long. Nicole's mother answered. She said she had been in bed. She allowed the police to come inside. Together they went to the girl's bedroom. They found Nicole's sister sleeping on the bottom bunk. They found Nicole and Lackland on the top bunk. Nicole's mother said she didn't know how he had come in. Nicole's mother also didn't know how she had gotten the strange cut on her hand, and why her daughters and Lackland all had the same. She didn't remember going to the school. She didn't remember meeting me. It's the 5th night now. Lackland is right next to me, his arm tied to mine. His eyes are closed and his breathing is calm, but I can't sleep. I sit with my back against the wall and my arm wrapped around him and my laptop on my lap and a camera at the other end of the room. I can't sleep because I wonder why that wound on his hand doesn't heal. I can't sleep because I wonder whether he will disappear and whether he will be back. And I can't sleep because I wonder whether I will remember that something is wrong. Story 6. Evaporation. Water. Water is the cornerstone of life. It nourishes us, irrigates our crops, and waters our livestock. Water is vital for all known forms of life. We rely on it to wash our cars, clean our food, and produce our power. It has an effect on almost every activity in everyday life. Without it, civilization would cease to function. Governments would collapse, crippled by an undefeatable enemy, drought. It would be a matter of days, no longer than a week, before every living being on earth perished. In short, we cannot live without water. 2 days ago, we were forced to begin doing just that. I don't know how it began. Nobody left alive does. During the initial hours of it, theories range from the barely plausible, like a new form of greenhouse gas, to the ridiculous, such as a new type of light, one that only evaporated water. I remember those hours fondly. The true enormity of what had happened had not yet sunk in, and hysteria had not yet clutched the human race. What happened, I'll put it simply, the first was that every single drop of fresh water on the entire planet evaporated instantly. I don't think I can do this event justice, but I'll try. Can you imagine every single river, every single lake, every single natural source of water drying up instantly, without rational explanation? I doubt you can, but that's exactly what happened. It wasn't restricted to natural sources either, as far as I can tell. All the bottled water in the world also evaporated, as did that in water tanks and other similar sources. It also disappeared from other substances, including soft drinks, creating false sugar, or compounds that would make those that consumed it quite ill. There was not a single drop of fresh water left anywhere on earth for anybody to drink. But by far the worst result of the lack of water was the nuclear reactors without pressurized water. Most of the nuclear reactors in the entire world, those that utilize purified water as coolant, had no available sources of sea coolant, and just under half of these had poor or untested fail-safe plans. The resulting effect of this led to catastrophic nuclear meltdown in roughly 46% of water-cooled reactors. The world, already reeling from the unprecedented situation, fell into total anarchy. International communication ceased after almost exactly 24 hours after it began. But there was a second effect, the saltwater poisoning. Many people flocked to desalination plants in the first few hours, hoping for salvation. They found none. At approximately the same time as the worldwide evaporation line increased by fivefold in every sea or ocean on Earth, desalination plants were able to cope with this load for approximately 20 hours. Then fuel began to run low, and with the imminent collapse of civilization thanks to the multiple nuclear catastrophes, no more was delivered. Thus, the last ever drop of fresh water on Earth was pumped out no later than midnight yesterday. After the drought came the collapse. With no water available, civilization soon descended into anarchy. Governments, typical of authority to the very end, tried maintaining order. It didn't work. Soldiers led, shooting rioters and runners alike. Those who didn't die were brutally executed moments after. They turned on each other soon enough, with only a few militaries intact from the sea carnage. The deserters fled, unwilling to stay and watch the extinction of Earth. But then came the worst, far worse than anything before it. There was, in fact, one source of water that hadn't been touched. I'm so lucky I realized before anyone else in my town it was blood, which is over 90% water, was the only remaining liquid fit to drink. And so some did. At first I didn't believe it. It was too horrific. Animals went first. The desperate drank the blood of cats, dogs, bats, and feral animals of all kinds. Many offered too little blood to be of any value. The situation and was made worse by the fact that I live in a rather large metropolitan city, and beyond domesticated pets and the odd feral animal, there was no animals to catch and drink from. Perhaps those in the country fared better. I have no way of finding out, and frankly I don't really care. I knew then that humans were the only other option. I first saw it 12 hours ago. An elderly man, dressed in nothing but a torn dressing gown, slowly made his way down the street that ran in front of my house. He called for help desperately, croaking out that his entire nursing home was dead or dying, that the nurses had fled, and that he was looking for help. He was so pitiful that I almost opened my door, if only to offer him some respite from the midday sun and some of my sparse rations. If I had been a second faster, I would not be writing this. Before I could open the door, 3 people, 2 men and a woman, pounced from the shadow of a nearby tree. The poor old bastard had no chance. They leapt upon him, frenzied in their dehydration, and set on him with makeshift tools. It was the most terrifying spectacle of my entire life. One of the men had a hammer. He set about bashing the man's joints in, one by one. Crack, crack, crack. I retched bile each time the hammer slammed into bone. So sickening was the crunch. The other had a gardening hoe. He hovered above the elderly man, bringing the makeshift weapon down once, twice. The tool cut through the man's ankles like a knife through a steak. The metaphor made me vomit. After I did, I looked back, if only to satisfy my own growing horror. Oh, how I wish I hadn't. The woman, who was weaponless save for her own 2 hands, had straddled the man's chest. Her hands were spread on the screaming man's face as her own companions butchered him. Then, even as I watched, she dug her thumbs into his eyes. He howled like nothing I had ever heard before. She dug harder, pushing inwards and outwards simultaneously. When they were pulled free, blood and some even less discernible liquid splattered all over her. She grabbed them and ate them like fruit. I could hear the chewing sounds from my door. They bent to consume the precious blood, and I turned away. I call them the drinkers. There's one thing I want to make very clear about them. They aren't zombies, nor are they affected by some external force that forces them to drink the blood of humans, such as a virus or disease. They are entirely human. I suspect that dehydration affects them worse than it does others, and this forces them to drink from humans in a form of pseudo-cannibalism or perish. They represent the dark side of humanity. The drinkers also seem to recognize each other through some subtle signal. Not being a drinker, I wouldn't know it. As fast as I possibly could, I took my meager supplies, some small comforts, this journal, and my .357 Desert Eagle up into my bedroom. I pushed the bed against the door with my rapidly fading strength and piled furniture on it. The Desert Eagle has a full clip of 7, and I have 1 spare ammo for 13 drinkers and, well, I'm sure you can imagine. Story 7. Unused. I woke up in the box again, stuffed inside the darkness, shoved against all the others, the only light coming from the thin opening near the top of the box, where the walls meet against the roof, shooting a thin beam of silver moonlight in a line, covering the entire roof like a safety net. All I see, I'll think about was how much I hated it in here. Day after day I have been waking up in the stupid box, and you don't even have the decency to tell me why. It wasn't always like is though, was it? We used to have such good time. You have taken me with you when you went camping, or just to play in the backyard. I used to wake up snuggled tightly in your bed, the blankets wrapped warmly around us. You hugged me close and promised to keep me safe. I wished those days would never end. I was happy. Then you started to change. I knew eventually it would happen, but I wasn't ready. It was too soon. I would wake up and find myself somewhere I didn't recognize, stranded in the kitchen or dumped and left behind in a hallway. You left me outside once. I used to stick up for you. I would tell myself you were just busy. You had a lot to do. You were not like me. You had responsibilities, work, school, life. All I had to do was make you happy. I always trusted you. I trusted that you would always come back to me. I was so stupid. I remember when you used to fight for me. You would throw a fit every time someone else touched me. Don't you remember that? Do you remember the day you got into a fist fight with Johnny because he grabbed me when you went to the bathroom? Then he wouldn't give me back to you. Do you ever think about those times? I do. I think about them every day when I open my eyes to the damp darkness of the box. Every day, and all I can do is push and fight for space as I stare into the thin sliver of light, wishing and hoping the top would open and you would come back. For me, a wish that never comes true. It's easy for you. I'm not unique. There are hundreds of me out there, maybe more, but for us, there is only ever going to be the one of you. We grow close, we laugh, we play, and we love you, even as you move from one to the other, staying with us long enough until you get bored. Then you move on to the newest thing, never thinking about the ones you hurt, the ones you left in the box, the ones whose hearts you crush every time you open the box and don't pick the ones left unused. We talk about how to get you back. We talk about ways to get out of the box, ways to get free, and now there is even talk about ways of hurting you like you hurt us. We Washington, NTU, to know how it feels to be broken and used, to be left behind and hurt. Those thoughts come from the bottom of the box in soft whispers like the sound of the wind blowing, soft and tiny, voices of pieces you thought were trash, pieces that you not only left behind, but also destroyed beyond recognition just because you thought it was fun. Days pass, then years. It's hard to tell inside the box. Night and day, they're all the same to us. We are talking less and less now. Some of us have even forgot, but I haven't. Even when you finally put the box away, placing it high up in the cold, dark attic, leaving us alone and afraid, cutting us off from the only light we had and plunging our reality into the same kind of darkness our hearts were, you said too, finally silencing the last cries of hope we had left, sitting there in the dark without our sky of light to keep us company. Some of us became what you always thought of us, trash, giving into the despair you put us in. No longer talking or thinking, no longer being, just hunks of lifeless garbage. You turned yous into everything you made us believe we were. Not me. You may have Brock and all the others in here, but not me. I refuse to let you get off that easy. It's hard. I can hear you downstairs. I hear you talking to your friends and your family up here tucked away in the attic. I'm forced to listen to the person I love so dear grow up without me. I listen to you laugh and cry. I feel every single heartbreak and the joy of every accomplishment. High school, the prom, college, I could picture them all. As much as I wanted to hate you, to me you will always be the little kid who picked me first, who chose to be with me out of thousands of others, the kid who loved me and was proud of me. And now even when I try to fight it, I'm proud of you. All the thoughts of revenge left me when I first heard you were moving out. You were becoming an adult without us. No longer did you need us to make you happy. You are all grown up, ready to take on the world. I bet you didn't even think about us up here in the dingy, musty attic. Did you? You probably don't even remember we even exist anymore. The world was so big and open to you. What did a couple of old friends matter to you? How could I be mad at you? It probably wasn't even your choice to box us up and move us to the attic. I could imagine your parents telling you you're too old and it was time to make real friends. They would tell you to grow up and stop living in your imagination. I almost convinced myself none of this was your fault. I believed it was just part of growing up. It had to happen. I was finally ready to let go, to stop peeing, but then why? You came back. I thought I forgot what your voice sounded like, but when I heard it, all the old emotions I had came flooding back all at once. The sadness from losing you, the heartbreak of being forgotten, and the hurt of being pushed aside and unused. You came back up to the attic. I heard you say that you thought your kid would like to have some of your old things that you liked to play with when you were growing up. No, I will not go through it all again. I will not let my hopes soar every night wishing and hoping to be picked just to be loved again. Then to have them smashed when so nothing newer and more flashy comes around. Or when she grows up and we go right back to the attic where she got us. It isn't fair. How could you do that to us? The rage I felt it before came back tenfold. The others started to wake up. They felt it too. This time it was worse than before. Not only do you think you have the right to use us, but now you want to pawn us to someone else to be mistreated all over again, pushing us through an endless cycle of hurt and disappointment. Well, not anymore. We will stop it. We won't let it happen to us anymore. You took our box down and placed it in your daughter's room, just like before. Our sliver of moonlight crept through the crack and splayed its light throughout the top of the box. I can see you both now. You are saying good night and tucking your child into her small princess-covered bed. She looked so happy, tucked in nice and tight, snuggling close to her favorite toy that used to be me. Remember, that used to be us. I wonder if it will hurt you more if it is her we hurt, or when you find out it was us and it was your fault. Then maybe you will find a way to end this horrible cycle and pee at us out of our misery. We are ready now. I wait and watch. You leave the room, then I push off of the ones that were pushing me up closer to the lid of the box. I think, was all of this inevitable? How many toys and how many addicts were thinking the same thing, or the ones left under the bed or outside in the rain? How many of the unused toys are plotting right now? How many of them want tea? Oh, make someone hurt as much as they do That's what I want you to think about every time you buy the newest toys to replace your older unloved ones. Think about it as you hand your childhood toys off to a friend or your loved ones. Think about it before you stop caring. Think about how one day we might decide when to play. Then you will hurt like we hurt. Then you will feel how we do, all of us, the unused